Hi everyone, Tony Tonkin here from the Child Protection Party. I'm glad that you could be with me tonight to talk about a subject which is kind of taboo, a subject I guess which very few of us would talk about or even think about, but is very important because it relates to parents killing their own children. And I'd be interested to know what you think about this. And in the meantime, I would just like to welcome you all to CPP TV. So there's a number of things that, before we get into this topic, that I'd like to talk about. And one of them primarily is there's two things. Number one is that I put a video up today in relation to the Australian Electoral Commission, and particularly in relation to their audit of us, which means that they're going to go around and they're going to call a number of you to ask you whether you're a member of the Child Protection Party, just to make sure, just to check, to see that the names of the people that we give them are correct. And we're asking you to simply say, yeah, I am, and I'm excited about the fact that I belong to the Child Protection Party, and I'm hoping that they do really well at the next election. So we'd just like your support in relation to that, and I'm just warning you that they might be calling you at some time. The other issue I wanted to raise was that it's not really an issue, is that I had a fabulous interview with a mum on the weekend, which we had videoed, but we chose to put the audio out of that. It's really worth listening to. I know a lot of people don't tend to listen to audios, perhaps for whatever reason, on Facebook, but it is available on Spotify under Kids Matter. And if you'd like to listen to what the experiences that this woman had in relation to her disabled children and them being taken from her and then returned to her, it's a fabulous story. It's a story of success, and it's a story about an articulate woman who was able to take it to the department and to eventually have her children returned to her. A fantastic, successful story, and is worth listening to. She has a lot of great advice for those of you who are wrestling with the department at the moment. So please take the opportunity to listen to what she has to say. As I said, it's available on Anchor, it's available on Spotify, and you can access it through our Facebook page. So please use that opportunity to have a look at that. So I just want to be able to say that I want to also use this opportunity to answer as many questions as we can. So if you would like to let us know, if you've got things that you want us to answer, please let me know. I'll keep an eye on that. Avery's also moderating it from home. So let us know if you've got things that you want or questions that you've got that you'd like us to respond to, issues that you'd like us to address. At the moment, we've got a bit of a drive happening in terms of membership. So if you're not a member of the Child Protection Party and you live here in Australia, please do so. Just go to childprotection.party/join, and you'll be able to join with us. So I just want to, in a moment, head off to this. Now my watch is talking to me. I just want to head off to have a conversation around filicide. Now, for those of you that aren't aware, filicide is when a parent takes the life of a child. And I came upon an article in The Conversation, which we've now put up on our webpage, in relation to this particular topic. And the thing that concerned me anyway, was the fact that a parent would take the life of a child. I can't understand how or why a parent would even think that that's an appropriate thing to do. I can kind of, I guess, imagine circumstances under which a parent might think that I need to take the life of a child. But I can't understand why a parent would actually act in that way. So I'd like us to have a conversation about this, because this article, which I'll bring up for you in just a moment, was particularly distressing in relation to that. So this is the article, and here it mentions that. So the article was titled "Men and Women Kill Their Children in Roughly Equal Numbers, and We Need to Understand Why," and we do. I haven't got any answers here. Normally I have sort of a sense as to what actually happens and why people might choose to do certain things and why there are certain behaviours that people will care to adopt. But in this instance, I don't understand it. I do know of some circumstances where women have considered and attempted to carry this out. And one of the reasons why my understanding is that they may do this is that the world in which they live is so horrific and so abusive that they're fearful that the children may go through the same experiences that they went through. And there's also another situation where a parent may believe that the children are likely to be sexually abused by another parent, and the family court has chosen that this child should be returned to the abusive father. I know of one case where that didn't turn out all that well for the child either, but the parent particularly was concerned that life was going to be horrific for this child if they were returned. So they make a choice that it would be better for the child not to go through that hell, and therefore have chosen in some cases to take that child's life. Now, I understand that that is an extreme experience and that it is something which hopefully a choice that people don't make. But I think it is at that point whereby a parent is so lost, feels so helpless and hopeless about their experiences that they believe that it is the only choice that they can make. And then there's the other choices that I know some men have made, and that is at the point of separation, I can't have this family, I no longer have this woman, and because I don't have this woman, I'm going to take the kids as well. So if I can't have her and I can't have the kids because we're separated, then I'm just going to make sure that everybody's life ends. So I think they're kind of the criteria for which I understand filicide, but I still cannot ever be able to put myself in a position where I could take anybody's life, let alone the life of a child. But there are some interesting aspects of filicide which I thought we would highlight here, and they come up in this article. So there are a couple of interesting things. Is that on average, one child is killed by a parent almost every fortnight in Australia. I found that statistic particularly horrifying, and I think that we all should be mindful that this is, if we're losing one kid on average a week as a result of this, that's horrific, and I don't see solutions necessarily being presented in relation to this. I don't see people standing up and talking about this as a problem. We talk about, so one woman on average dies a week from domestic violence. And we talk about it. It's a problem. We know it's a problem. Anybody's death through a non-accidental event is a problem. And here we have where, a fortnight, almost every fortnight, one child dies on average as a result of being murdered by their parent. And yet we stand back and we don't say all that much about it. And it just goes on to say that, and that there's a number of examples that most of you might know. It was just a week or so ago that there was the death of those 3 children that were killed by their mum. And then there was a number of incidents where kids have been killed by their father. But the issue that I wanted to just highlight is that this is not a gender issue. This isn't one of those issues where we have a lot of statistics that will say that the majority is one gender and not another. That as far as filicide is concerned, equally shared by both genders. So there's no gender blaming here whatsoever, but there are some nuances that need to be at least looked at. The common curses, so it goes on to say, the common precursors to filicide include a history of domestic and family violence, parental separation, and mental illness. And by saying that, they're not separating that from male and females necessarily. It's just one of the identified precursors of it. And they do make this point further down that men commit almost all forms of violence at higher rates. Doesn't mean women aren't violent, it's just that all forms of violence at higher rates. And the most common form of domestic homicide, intimate partner homicide, is committed far more by men against women in the context of domestic violence. So we're looking at situations which are not necessarily about domestic violence, and they're not necessarily about men committing those particular crimes either. And they do talk about mothers are also more likely to kill their children during a psychotic episode. So when, and I think this is the case, my experience has been from the few cases I've worked with, that the time where women have considered murdering their children have been in those hopeless and helpless moments where the children are likely to be returned to someone who will continue to abuse them. And in their minds, this is where the psychotic episode comes in, their irrational thinking tells them that this is going to provide the way out so that the children don't experience the horrors of the abuse that they may experience at the hands of the abuser. So they think, if I kill them, they'll be free from whatever it is. They're not thinking, well, I need to find other ways in order to protect my child, or I need to work with my child so that this child will grow up to have a healthy adulthood, and rather they think of the most negative aspects of all of this without looking for other solutions. And I know that there have been one case I know of where a mother looked at every solution she could find, child protection services, the police, whatever, the family court. No one listened to her about the pending abuse that would happen on the children. At that point, she did have a psychotic episode because there was nowhere that she could go in order to get any help whatsoever. And that was devastating for her, and eventually devastating for one of her children. So I know that this happens, but it normally for women is around that moment where they are lost and don't know which way to go from there. The answers to why men commit suicide normally, or commit filicide, is really because this issue about they're so lost, they don't know how to. They've lost everything as they see it. They've lost their family, which were everything to them, usually something they tended to believe they owned. And that their state of hopelessness and helplessness was so extreme, and the depression so deep, that their belief is that if I can't have them, nobody can have them, and therefore I'm going to do away with them. And they do mention this article actually where, and I'll just bring it up, researchers suggest that this is the case that men are more likely to have proprietary attitudes to both women and children, and women primarily towards children. So the difference, I guess, is that men feel the same way around their proprietary attitudes to both, whereas women feel that particular way towards their kids. So while I've been doing that, I haven't been looking at our Facebook page. There's a lot of stuff happening there. It's good to see Karen there. I guess I wanted to help, like if there's anyone out there that has ever had any of these experiences, please let us know. Why did you have them? what could you have done to have avoided these experiences? There's no shame, I don't think, in admitting that the lowest possible point in your life was to end your life and somebody else's. The thing is, you didn't do that. We've all had those moments where we've thought, enough's enough. Maybe I'm feeling the pain is so intense, I just need to relieve that pain. And we've thought about, they say that 80% of people have experienced depression, and a great percentage of people have experienced, thoughts around suicide. So it happens. But then the interesting thing is, what prevents you? What do you do and what do you think that stops you from taking that extra step, which means the ending of your life and somebody else's? And it'd be helpful to have a conversation around some of those issues, I think. Thanks. Cara Barker says this is rarely discussed due to being a very taboo topic. Yeah, and we're discussing it because it is taboo. We need to raise awareness, increase preventative measures around a psychiatric disorder that are so severe that it results. Yes, and that's true. That we need to find ways to arrest the issue before it gets to that point where people may choose to end their lives or somebody else's life, particularly a child's life, or any life, for that matter, is crucial. So we need to be able to make sure that doesn't happen. And that we need to, I guess, guys, we just need to have this conversation, and we need to make people aware that they're not alone if they have those thoughts. And there are things that they could do to help them to address the issue that is being presented. I think a lot of people are often stigmatised by the notion that they may have really unhelpful thoughts, and a lot of people will stand up and say, you're crazy. The reality is, you're not crazy if you're seeking help. You're not. You're not crazy for having these thoughts. A lot of people have them. What is crazy and unfortunate is when you act upon them and you do terrible things and you hurt and harm and kill other people. That's what's wrong. But seeking help because you have those thoughts is a good thing. It shows strength, and it shows that you're prepared to address the issue, as opposed to doing nothing about it and then carrying out with the thoughts. So act upon it and get some help. Hi, Tony. Daniel, here a question for you. Can DCP stop? Oh, this is changing subject a bit, Dan. Fair enough. Let's do that. What's he saying? Hour a month when I only get 2 hours a month to see my little boy. As their DCP excuse is because he has started school, and asked why not hours a fortnight visit. DCP said maybe video call or phone call. Dan, in relation to decisions being made when kids are at school, there are a number of issues that arise. I guess the primary issue is that suddenly when a kid goes to school, it does limit the number of hours that a child can, that a parent can have access to a child, primarily because suddenly you've got, within a very short time span, office availability at the department if those kids are being supervised, and also the hours in the day are diminished because the kids are at school for a fair percentage of that time. And the department, because they don't employ the additional staff that they require at this time, often run out of staff and access workers. So that's one of the reason is not because necessarily a parent's a bad parent. The reason is because DCP is a terrible organisation and aren't prepared to act in the best interest of the kids and the parents. So that's the primary reason. And the other thing I guess we need to mention is that at the end of the day, DCP or any child protection services can do whatever they friggin' like. You're at their whim, basically. and it's about the way they wish to organise their time, not the way you wish to organise your time. And it's not actually about what's in the best interest of your child. If your child wants to see you, needs to see you for a couple of hours a week. And you know why? Why can't they spread it out? Well, probably for the same reasons I've mentioned. They should be able to, but they don't. So, yeah, it's a really good question. If you want any help with that, just let us know, let Avery know, and we'll make contact with you. It is an interesting one. Simi says there's no... Yes, I haven't thought about postnatal depression. So that's a point too where a lot of parents, mums I believe, feel hopeless and helpless about the child, primarily because the hormones or whatever disrupts the whole system, I think, and then having this young thing appear before you and then having to look after this and wondering how to do that, am I going to cope and what's it going to be like, can throw a mum into a state of depression. And while they're there, that can be a moment where they have these terrible and horrific thoughts about what to do with this kid. So, and you know, Simi's right. There isn't enough support for new mums. And also I think that a mother who's just had a child, first child, often would not want to admit to having those thoughts. And, you know, these days, given the way Child Protection Department sort of wants to step in and grab these kids, one can understand why someone within the child protections, why a person would choose not to identify as having these issues, because then they may have the child removed from them, as opposed to just addressing whatever that issue is, making sure the kid's safe and working with the mum so they get through whatever that problem might be. No, it's too hard, because really, if it's deemed the child is unsafe, the department will step in and remove it. And then you have to go through the fight to get that kid back, because often it isn't just about postnatal depression. It's about all the other stuff that might sit around this mother's experiences years before having this child, whether that be bad relationships, mental health, whatever, just gets added on, even though the issue was about postnatal depression at that time. And a large percentage, I thought the figure, I could be wrong here, I thought the figure was something like 7 out of 10 mums have postnatal depression. And I think that would be 70. If all those kids were removed, that would be 70% of all kids that were born would be removed because their mothers were suffering from depression. And we know that clearly that doesn't happen, thank God. But any parent who sits on the rim of child protection, that is, they're poor, or they live in a poor part of town, or they're unemployed, or they have mental well-being issues prior to all of this, or whatever it might be, that will mean that will inflame the process, and lo and behold, the kid will be gone. So that's a really good point. So postpartum is an issue, and we need to address that as well. So thanks, Simi. I hadn't thought of that, but that's definitely fine. So who else have we got here? We've got quite a few. So I want to thank you all for contributing. Patricia has asked the same question about how can they reduce hours. I've explained that. And just on video calls too to kids, I know Dan raised that as well. Depending on the age, video calls are pretty useless. You know, a child, when they're about, up to the age of whatever, really, I guess it doesn't really matter. But kids like to be held, they like to be cuddled, they like to be carried. They like that tactile involvement with their parent. To take that away from them is critical to the child's development, emotional and psychological development. So it's imperative that we find ways to make sure that they have that tactile environment to be with their parent, as opposed to sitting on a screen somewhere, which is no different from a television screen or some other screen the kid might be using. There's a distance between them that you just don't get if you're close with a child face to face in a three-dimensional world. So So doing away with, I think COVID actually has brought about some really poor practices in terms of keeping biological parents, away from their kids. It's been horrific, and we certainly need to undo most of those practices, which have been FaceTiming with kids and disallowing their parents. And I think one of the reasons why that has happened is because the department has recognised that they don't have to transport kids for kilometres in order to see their parents. They don't have to, make sure that there are rooms available. They can do that from the foster parents or kinship parents' home, and that saves them money. And therefore, that is easier for the parent, for the department, right? And at the end of the day, it is always about what is easier for the department, as opposed to them going the extra mile, which is incidentally a really important social work principle, is that we go the extra mile for people. We don't limit it by funds. We don't limit it by time. We just go that extra mile to help a person get to where they need to go. The department goes the other way. They're kind of like in reverse when it comes to going that extra further for parents. They'll try and do as little as possible. I hear of social workers that don't answer emails, they don't answer their telephone, they don't engage with parents in a meaningful way. It's appalling, and it's not good. It's the opposite to what social work should be. And it's about time they pulled their friggin' socks up and started to behave as our profession would demand them to. So Avery's put up something on postpartum, so thanks, Avery, for doing that. If you have any questions or anything that you want to discuss with us, please feel free to do so. And also remember that if you want advocacy around issues concerning child protection, we particularly suggest that you contact the Riley Foundation. So Avery might like to just pop up them. It's THEREILY.foundation, and go on and ask for help there, and hopefully someone will be able to engage with you to help you around the issues that concern you. And finally, I just want to say that today I received a heartening message from someone who called me and said, and I only spoke to this woman over the phone, and I had a couple of meetings, some with the department and her, and the department were horrific, and she was trying to get one of the family members' kids back in her care that was taken off her, and I couldn't remember her at the time, and I had to look through my list of people with her first name, and then I found one. I thought that was it, so I called her back. And she was really grateful. So this is about me patting myself on the back. I want to make a point here. She was really grateful for the work that I did with her, because at the end of the day, what is important is that people have other people in their lives who understand them. Now that seems to be a simple request, doesn't it? But I never met her face to face. But I knew from talking to her on the phone, because she was extremely articulate, I knew she was a lovely, lovely woman who was working in the best way that she could. She had a few issues in her past. She had addressed them. And at the end of the day, she rang me to say that the child has been placed long-term in her care. And I think we hear so much negativity about the department, and I'm not too sure of the department's reason for putting the child back in her care, apart from the fact, in my view, she was a really fabulous young woman who really knew how to parent a couple of young kids of her own, and the department chose to do the right thing. They chose to do the right thing. And often we're really negative about the department, and rightfully so, because there's so much that's wrong that needs to change. But occasionally we hear some really good stories. I haven't marked off last year how many kids we've worked with that have been returned back to their parents, because often when a child gets returned after being working with them, we don't tend to hear from the parent again. But last year there were quite a few. There were quite a few that we had returned, or we worked with the parent, and eventually they returned back to their kid, their family. So it works. advocacy works, the Riley Foundation is there to help you, and the Riley Foundation also needs some funding in order to do their job better, because over the years, myself and Nadia have done it for nothing, and I'm no longer doing the advocacy stuff with the foundation, mostly focusing just on the Child Protection Party these days. But the work that is done to help people to get their kids back is invaluable. And last year there were lots of kids that were returned as a result of the advocacy work that we did with their parents. But of course, the work the parents did as well. I mean, particularly, I guess, the work the parents did made a difference. But being helped and supported is important to these people, as this woman was saying today. So contact the foundation if you need some help. And if you can provide some funds for them, they would appreciate that as well. So I want to say thanks, everybody, for being a part of this. And I want you to know that this year is going to be a fabulous year for the Child Protection Party. We need you to join. We need you to participate. So we've got a federal election coming up. We need one more candidate for that. If you're interstate, we need candidates interstate. If you would want to participate on the board of the Child Protection Party, let Avery Hilditch know, and he can sort out an application form for you, because we need heaps and heaps of people involved. There are lots of ideas out there about how we can make kids' lives different and more beneficial, and there are ideas we haven't even heard of or thought of yet, but I'm sure some of you do, and we ask you to share them with us so that it can make a difference. So thanks, everybody, for being with me. Take care, look after yourself, and be kind to those around you. Take care. Bye.